Hello, and welcome back to UX Spotlight, brought to you by Userlytics. I'm your host, Denis Cristea, and today we're tackling a massive issue, which is feature factory. So many teams get trapped into the endless cycle of building and shaping features without ever stopping to think about if it really solves a real user issue. And to unpack all of this, I'm thrilled to welcome Laura Klein to the show. Laura is a UX designer and an author of books such as Build Better Products and UX for Lean Startups. And without further ado, Laura, it's so great to have you here. I would perhaps ask you to tell us a little bit about your background and where you're currently standing.
Sure. Hi. Thank you so much for having me. As you said, I've written a couple of books. I've been doing tech stuff for, let's say, 30-ish years. So a while. I've been an engineer, a product manager, a researcher, a designer. I get bored easily, so I jump around a lot. But yeah, I've been talking about figuring out better ways to understand if you're building the right thing for quite some time now. Happy to get into it with you.
That's amazing. It's great to have you here, Laura. And I hope we're gonna have a productive conversation. And I know the users and the listeners out there will love it. And with this being said, I would say let's dive into our main theme. The term feature factory gets thrown around a lot, I would say. And I want to ask you, in your experience, what really defines a feature factory, and why do you think so many well-intentioned agile teams still fall into this trap?
It's so funny because feature factory is one of those terms that I think is really useful, but is maybe a little deceptive because, you can kind of look and go like, well, but we all build features. Like that's what we do. That's how we deliver things. We deliver them. You actually want to build things as a feature. You don't want to just build random things that don't hold together. So why is it so bad? Well, the thing that really defines a feature factory as opposed to just, making nice stuff for your users is that feature factories are only concerned with building the thing. They are concerned with building and shipping features. They are not concerned with, are they the right features? How did they do? It's the same thing when you look at empowered teams versus feature teams. Like again, we all build features, but the question is, are we building them looking at whether it was the right thing to do? Are we looking at our metrics? Are we looking at whether it improved things? Are we going back and iterating and improving them and seeing them as things that live on and as part of our product? Or are we just looking at like built the thing, shipped the thing, next thing. And I think a lot of teams fall into this because they become obsessed with speed. We're seeing this even more now, especially with AI, when teams are really optimizing just for get things out faster. But the point of getting things out faster is to be able to quickly learn if they were the right thing and change them or get rid of them if they were not. And if we're leaving out that step, faster doesn't make a damn bit of difference. Faster, you're just shipping bad stuff faster, which, great.
No, that's true. It's not really. It's so you're saying it's not really aiming to solve any issue. It's just like focusing on the actual building of the product without really validating it, without really knowing if it's actually solving a problem, if it's useful on the market or not.
Right. That's the factory part of it, right? Like if you work in a factory, you are being judged on how many of the widgets that your factory makes gets out the door, whether they were of the right quality depending on the spec. But you're not necessarily like you, if you are a worker at the factory, aren't necessarily looking at like, are people using the thing that I made? Like, are they selling? That's somebody else's problem. And I think that feature factory teams really kind of run into that. Like, no, look, my job as an engineer or as a, product manager or designer, my job is to make the thing, ship the thing, move on to the next thing.
That's very interesting that you said that, because I have a curiosity. Perhaps you can enlighten us. When doing the research for this episode, I um, obviously prepared the questions, and this one specifically popped into my mind because it actually goes directly to the main core of the issue that you just explained previously. And well, my question is, for the PMs and the researchers listening, which there are quite a few. What are some practical frameworks or strategies you would think they could use to quickly validate an idea before the engineering teams write a single line of code?
So there's a ton of them. There's a lot of them in both of my books, and I don't want to just like list a bunch of different things. Here's what I will say generally speaking: doing any kind of research ahead of time and during and doing continuous discovery work and all of that, it will. I know that it takes some time. I understand that. I understand that research is not immediate. I think that the focus on making all research goes super fast or, oh, we're only going to do the lightest possible weight. No. The more you learn about people, the more you learn about your users, the more you learn about what they want, what they struggle with, up up to a certain point, which is actually quite high, the more you learn about it, the better the features are going to be when you put them out, and the less likely you're going to be to have to redo them later. So it all research with some very borderline exception. Okay, I mean, we don't need to necessarily do a year-long ethnography study, purchasing habits of, the North American soccer mom. Like, we don't necessarily need to do
Yeah.
all of it, but almost any kinds of research will actually end up speeding you up if you think about speeding up delivering value and delivering good things and delivering things that your users actually want. That it all makes you faster. Just having a single feature that, maybe takes a few weeks or a few months to build and ship, having a single feature that wasn't well thought out, that wasn't based on anything real, that wasn't based on user needs, that doesn't deliver any value, that is such an enormous waste of time and money that, like, if you could have done any research at all to avoid building that thing, you would be way ahead, right? So I don't want to think too much about, like, what's the fastest possible way. I mean, yes, there are some quick ways to do things. There are things like, guerrilla user research and or usability studies. There are some basic things that we can do, but all good research makes the features and the products better. Now, whether that makes you more money or whether that makes you successful generally, hard to say right now, looking at a lot of the things that are getting shipped that are, let's just say, terrible and not perfectly well thought out, but that are nevertheless getting a huge amount of venture funding and making a lot of revenue. So, but if your concern is making things better for your users, which I hope it is, any kind of research will speed you up because it will prevent you, hopefully, from making really bad decisions that take you a long time to fix.
Now, what would happen if so in the process of validating your idea, the research shows that you're heading in a wrong direction,
Hmm.
but you're actually dead set on actually producing that product? What do you do then?
I mean, what I've seen happen, because I see that happen an awful lot, I think you sometimes hear about you hear about the success stories where, people say, oh, everybody said they didn't want this, but then we went ahead and made it anyway, and it was a huge success. And you do hear a few of those. Generally, when I hear about those, when I actually look at the kind of research that they did, they went out and they asked people if they wanted a thing, and the people were like, no, that's not actual research. All the researchers out there right now are going, that is not actual research, right? That is not research. That is asking people to predict the future. That is trying to make people psychic, and people suck at that. So, but what I have actually seen in some large companies that shall remain nameless because I don't want to get sued, I have seen that exact thing play out. And what has happened in the last few that I personally watched, one, they wasted 2 years on a feature or a whole new set of products that they ended up not actually finally shipping, wasted huge amounts of money, a whole team, took time away from building things that people actually wanted because they were dead set on building the thing that they thought people wanted. In another case, the company lost roughly $1 billion in revenue because they were looking at the wrong metrics. And when the user research team said, hey, we're getting really bad feedback on this, we think people don't understand it and don't like it and are going to churn, they just ignored it. So there are a lot of stories like that you don't hear about because people don't want to talk about that. People want to be successful. People want to say, well, we had this great idea and everybody doubted us, but then we shipped it and everybody loved it. And it's like, well, okay, great. But for every one of those, I've seen half a dozen or a dozen of the other ones. And that's just like stuff I've personally witnessed.
No, absolutely. I would think everybody wants to talk about their successes, but not their failures. These are like hidden things.
Yes. I will also say when I did consulting, and this is a while back now, but when I did consulting, I often got brought in to specifically to fix things. And when I said, okay, well, what research has been done that got you to this point that now you need to hire an expensive external consultant to come in and fix? Great. What research? Oh, we didn't have time to do research, so we just built it. Like, okay, well, you're going to have time to do research now. I mean, apparently you have time to do research now and pay an expensive person to come in and fix the problem. Probably
Yeah.
would have been cheaper and faster to just do it right the first time, but who am I to judge? Wait, I'm the person you literally hired to come in and judge. So that's that. Yeah, that's who I am.
Um, I agree with your point. That's a very valid point, indeed. But now that you mentioned research, I want to perhaps shift back a bit the topic towards research because I think this is the most important part when developing a product. Actually, it's the research, and I want to touch on the balance between qualitative and quantitative research. And a lot of product teams, I would say, perhaps rely heavily on analytics to
Hmm.
make their product decisions. Sometimes,
They certainly say they do.
or they say they do.
Yeah,
I guess we have to take them on their word.
sure.
And sometimes that happens at the expense of actually talking to users, to the actual people who use the product. And you've spoken about the danger of relying solely on metrics. Can you perhaps break down the difference between what analytics tells us versus what qualitative research tells us, and how teams can effectively combine both to make confident decisions?
Yeah, I mean, I've been talking about this stuff since like 2009. So quant tells you what's going on in your product. Qualitative tells you why it's going on. That's it. Like that's the whole thing. So let me tell you a quick story to illustrate this. I was in a meeting, once again, it's a few years ago now, several years ago now. I'm not gonna give you hints about who it was. I was in a meeting, very expensive meeting, bunch of high level people. The head of the division said, "Okay, we have a problem with this particular metric. I'm not going to bore you with what the metric is because it's very technical and very boring. But it was important. It was very important, and it was important to revenue. But we have a problem with this metric. It is too low." And they said, "Okay, well, how can we fix this metric that is too low?" And then they just this group of very smart, very senior people just all started like ideating and solutionizing about, well, we could offer people this, or we could do this thing, or we could change this technical thing, or and finally, after listening to this for like 15 minutes, I said, well, why is the metric low? And they kind of stared at me like I had grown a second head. And I said, well, like it matters, right? Like if it's low because there's a
Of course.
technical problem, we should fix the technical problem. If it's low because people don't understand the thing, we should fix that. If it's low because there's a bug somewhere, I don't know. Like I if you're looking, if you're looking at, so for example, let's say you're running an e-commerce site and it's like nobody's buying this new product. Okay, well, you can start going like, oh, what can we do? We can offer a discount, we can push it, we can discontinue it, we can offer new colors. Like there's all sorts of things. But the first question is, well, why the hell are people not buying the product? Right? Oh, we didn't actually list it on the website. Oh, that's an easy fix. Let's do that. Or the description of it is insane. Nobody knows what it does. Oh, okay, maybe we should fix that. They're all different fixes depending on why the problem exists. And if you don't actually know why the problem exists, which generally you don't, I mean, you come up with a lot of theories, but it's really actually kind of easy to find out why the problem exists if you do a little bit of qualitative research. And but I think that you need both. Like I'm not saying you don't need the quant. I'm saying sometimes you do need the quant to identify the problem like that. Like this metric, it's a problem. This product isn't selling. Whatever. You see that, you go, okay, great. That's what's going on. Why? Why is that happening? It's this thing. Great. That narrows down the scope of our fixes quite a bit, which is useful because it saves us a lot of time doing a bunch of fixes that don't make things better or maybe make things worse, right? Like we could spend a lot of time rewriting the product description, but if that's not the problem, we just wasted all that time.
And resources, of course.
And resources and people and yeah, I mean money. Like that's money, baby. Let's not waste that.
Yeah, no, exactly. And you just mentioned that you were in a scenario in a meeting where there were some high level people.
Mhm.
And it just crossed my mind that in this kind of situations where, well, you need to have research, the research can be pressured to go faster from uh, people in the company who want the product to have a special release date. So I would ask you, how would you think you can handle pushback from leadership or stakeholders who are obsessed with hitting a specific release date for a product?
I mean, look, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I think a lot of these problems are not fixable at the IC level. I, I, I I have spent a lot of my career trying to give people tools for doing things the correct way. And then I have released them into organizations where their contributions are not valued, let's say. And I feel bad about that because I feel like I'm just feeding orphans into the wood chipper. And I want to make it very clear that are there some things that you can try? Yes. You have probably already tried them, but if you haven't, try tracking things that have gone wrong in the past because we ignored research. Try sharing the research more broadly. Try having relationships and building coalitions. Most of the researchers that I know who are any good are already great at those things, right? I also don't want to tell you, oh, just go get another job at a place that values you because I know what the market looks like out there and it is not great. So I don't know that you can, as an IC, fix it. If you are a senior director or a VP, or if you are at a startup where maybe there are fewer people who are making these decisions, will some of these like very well-known techniques of like showing people the problems that are happening in your product and actually showing them what good research does and all that, like, will those help in those situations? Yeah, almost certainly. Like they will help in small organizations where you have a lot of sway. They will not necessarily help in large organizations, except over a long period of time. A long period of time, like patience, building relationships, storytelling, using video, all the things that we tell researchers to do will, like little drops of water, will wear away stone, will eventually make some difference. So I wish you the best of luck. If it does not work, I absolve you of responsibility for it. It is not your fault.
Right. So this would be the example of not having enough validation before going on a market because of some sort of pressure from high up.
Yeah, anytime you're getting any kind of pressure from high up, like a lot of times that the fix for that needs to come from high up. One of the things way back when I was doing some like organizational transformation stuff with people that were trying to become more lean or trying to transform to become more agile and all those kinds of fun buzzwords. One of the things that we saw over and over, and a lot of my friends who did this kind of work will support me on this, basically said unless you have agreement and pressure from the very top of the organization, that organizational transformation absolutely will fail. Chance it will fail anyway. But if you're trying to do it from like an IC or like a management level, like a lower management level, and you're trying to like make this big, like we're going to all be agile or we're going to all do continuous discovery, very good chance that you are going to have very little impact unless you have support from the higher levels, because you need to change the incentive structure that does things like push for releasing on a particular date instead of releasing the right thing. Unless you change the incentive there, unless you change how people get promoted within your organization, people are still going to do that.
Right. You got to go where the decision power making is.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if my senior vice president gets promoted based on whether or not they shipped a thing, then they're going to ship the thing.
Right, because
They're not going to
the,
say no, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Makes sense. But just switching back to research for one quick second, I have a small curiosity, which is we discussed what happens if you don't get enough validation so far.
Mhm.
What is the risk of doing too much validation and not knowing when is enough?
It's smaller, I would say, these days, that particular risk. I mean, I think that there may still be, a few, like, we did run into this a bit back in the day where, people would really feel like every, research study has to be double blinded and take 6 months, and, look, if we're not actually releasing pharmaceuticals, then maybe we don't need to do that. We do need to think about research as de-risking things, right? We need to look at what the riskiest assumptions are. This is a thing we talk about a lot on Lean. You know, what are the riskiest assumptions? What are the things, what are the we assume to be true that if they are not true, we are going to ship something terrible? What are the riskiest assumptions? Is it that people want this thing? Is it that people can use this thing? What is it? And then we need to de-risk that. We need to do enough research until we understand or we truly believe, I don't think that's as risky as we thought it was, right? So things like, I mean, even if you're looking at something like usability testing, people used to, once upon a time, and I think some companies still do this, but very few, they would do, I need statistical significance on my usability testing. It's like, you really don't. Um, you need to
Yeah.
watch enough people so that you got a good sense, and then you need to make some changes, and then you need to continue to do it over time. But like at a certain point, is the thing usable or not? You can kind of go, yeah, we're pretty sure. Like we're
Yeah.
mostly sure. This is we're sure enough that this is no longer the riskiest assumption, and we are going to take the limited resource, which is our user researchers, and we are going to put them on something more dangerous, right? There's no point in having them do a million usability studies if the real risk is that we aren't doing enough discovery research.
So doing the research for this podcast, I ran into a few interesting terms that are being used, and one of these terms is that research is a team sport, right?
Mhm.
And how can UX researchers better expose, well, perhaps product managers and engineers to real feedback from the user to build that cross functionality empathy?
Yeah. So a couple of ways. You can observe sessions. You should observe sessions. Everybody should observe sessions. That doesn't mean that absolutely everybody on the team needs to go to absolutely every single research session, but you need to go to some of them. Your team should absolutely be responsible or involved, let's say involved with doing analysis and synthesis. So we're going through, we've watched some of the videos and we're going through, we're doing our sticky notes or however you do it, right? We're looking at what are the themes that we saw? What are the concerns? How are we going to do that? Again, not everybody has to do every single part in lockstep, but everybody should be involved in all of those things. Also, again, putting together things like video reels of people experiencing the same problems or who have the same, there's something very viscerally satisfying about watching, a usability, like a supercut of 5 people failing at the same problem in a usability study. Like it's just you I guess it's the opposite of satisfying, right? It's problematic. It makes you feel like, oh, that is a thing that we are doing to our users right now.
Yeah,
And nothing gets that across better than just watching people fail
yeah. It's
repeatedly at a
better.
thing you made. So painful. So painful.
Yeah, no, definitely. This would be. It's also a way to, on a personal level, be aware of the issue
Mhm.
because, well, if you read a report and you see some stats and you see some, well, actual data on a paper, it doesn't have the same effect as seeing human beings struggling to do something,
Mhm.
and you know that you're causing that problem.
The other thing is that when you're doing, if you're not doing something like usability studies, if you're doing something more, ethnographic, if you're doing contextual inquiry, you're doing any kind of like observational research. One of the things that I have found, and I am not the first to have found this. be perfectly clear. I am not claiming this. This is not Laura Klein TM. One of the things that I think all of us have found is that if we all come to the conclusions together, we all believe the conclusions much better than if I go through a little deck and say, hey, I went through and I talked to people about this thing and they think you're wrong about everything. And that's real easy for people to kind of go, I'm going to pick apart your study or I'm going to ignore you or what. But like if they go through the process of actually doing the analysis and synthesis and we all come to the conclusion together that, ooh, there were some parts in here that we were wrong on, we are much more likely to build consensus as we are doing our synthesis and analysis tasks. And that is an important step that I think we miss. And again, it's faster. That's the weird thing. It's like, oh my God, am I going to get all of these people into a room to like watch videos together and like discuss this? And like that could take hours. Yes, but at the end of it, we all believe the same thing. How slow is it going to be if I have to go and do all of that work and then I have to convince 17 people of it?
No,
Right?
exactly.
That's not fast either.
No, it's best to just convince all these people at once.
Yeah.
Way faster. Absolutely. Talking about this and talking about research sessions in general and analyzing data in this way, one topic that's on the minds of every researcher, right now, is how will AI impact the industry? What would you say are the biggest upsides and downsides of AI right now?
It can produce things like summaries. It can produce things like translations. It can do a lot of, these kinds of things. Sometimes if you're using certain tools, NNG has written a lot of articles about how to use it safely to speed up parts of your process. But when we really looked at it, the thing that I find the most dangerous is when people really outsource the thinking part of it to AI. There's some other stuff that it is better at. It's pretty good at I shouldn't say it's pretty good at. It can do meta-analysis of a lot of data much faster than a human would. Now, again, is it always completely correct? No. But if it's the kind of thing where this data would be completely ignored otherwise because there's just too much of it, or if it's the kind of thing where you're going to pull a few things out of this enormous corpus of data and you're then going to go in and review them, that can be much faster. The example that I always like to give on that is, often teams, especially big research teams, will have a lot of old research studies, right? They have all this old research data, some of which may be relevant to what you're working on, some of which may not. No human knows everything that's on all of those studies. If you're like, go find me stuff that's relevant to this thing that I'm studying right now, and it pulls up, 100 things for you out of thousands of hours of video that you just would have ignored otherwise. You can go in, you can verify some, as long as you verify them, you can verify some of them. And you go, oh yeah, this is relevant. That's fantastic. I just learned something. Other things that people do, they might use them to look through recordings of customer service sessions or sales calls and those kinds of things. Nobody looks at that data, but it's really useful. But there's so much of it. Again,
Yeah,
as long as you
do it.
verify that it's correct, it's good. It may not know exactly what you care about, but it is better at that than a human. I mean, these are the kinds of tasks that maybe once upon a time we would have gotten a research intern who would come in and spend the summer looking at 100 hours of video and recoding it for specific things and produce one report about one thing that they looked at. And this is a thing that now you can do in 10 minutes or so. And cool. You can have the user, you can have the UX researcher, the intern go in and do a bunch of those and then verify all the data. And now you have all this useful information from your old repo that you would not otherwise have had. So yeah, I don't hate it for that.
So, upsides, benefits, and downsizes. But it's up to you to use it in whatever way you do. And if you use it in certain ways, you do it at your own risk.
That's right. Pay your money, take your chances.
That's how life is. Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Laura. And now we have come to my favorite section of the whole podcast, which is called Quickfire round.
All
Now,
right.
what this section is about is I have a line of questions that I'm going to ask you, and I want you to tell me the exact thing that comes through your mind when you hear this question. There's no need for any explanation, just your quick answer, and then we can move on to the next question. And this is the whole premise of this round.
Okay.
Sounds good?
Love it.
Amazing. Let's fire up. What's a UX buzzword you wish would completely disappear forever?
I mean, all of them.
Oh.
I all buzzwords turn into meaningless chatter. But if I have to pick one, I'm going to go with design thinking.
Design thinking.
Design thinking. It's just thinking.
You know, the previous
We don't have special brains.
the previous guest said the same thing.
Did they?
And yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I agree with you 100% because this is what we used to do in my university, and it's completely useless. And I
mean,
don't like
the original, once again, as with a lot of things, the original version of it was fine, was useful in certain circumstances, and the productized, packaged up version that is sold to companies is not.
Yeah, exactly. Moving on to the second question. What do you think is the best tool to use for rapid validation? We just talked about that.
It depends on what you're rapidly validating. There is no single tool that works for everything, and everything does not need a hammer. Everything needs the right tool to validate it.
Let's consider something. How can we generalize this?
You can't. You have to use critical thinking. Okay, best tool for rapid validation, critical thinking to figure out which tool you need to use to validate it. There you go.
Okay. And in this case, which one would it be?
In which case?
Well, you just...
What do we validate? What?
Let's pick something. So in your research, what's
Mhm.
the last thing you worked on with the team to validate?
It's been a while because I've been teaching so much recently. So that's if you're trying to validate whether something is usable, you use rapid usability testing, right? If you're trying to validate whether people actually want to buy a thing, then you might do something. You might do some kind of a fake door test, or you might do some kind of an early access. If you're looking to validate whether, people understand a thing, you can go with, simple things like landing page tests, or, if you're trying to figure out if you've got the right taxonomy, card sorting, tree testing, those kinds of things. Like there are myriad methods that you can use, and all of them are good for a slightly different thing.
Yeah, and it depends on what you validate.
Yeah, I should wear my It Depends t-shirt.
That's a good idea. In this case, let's move on to the next question, which is a bit more on point. And that is, what's a UX hill you're willing to die on?
I guarantee you nobody's going to give the same answer. People should make task flows. People should make task flows and user flows for complex interactions, because that's where the actual design work happens. And if you skip it, then you're outsourcing the actual logic of the thing to the engineers, and you shouldn't do that, because that is, in fact, the fact that you are not thinking through how all of the how and every single branch and all of the edge cases and corner cases and error cases and all of that. The fact that you're not thinking about those things is why people think that designers just make things pretty.
Okay. You are right. Nobody has ever given
No one has ever given that answer.
Exactly.
That is 100% a thing that only I care about. But yeah.
But should be important. So maybe to the listeners out there, to the UX researchers, maybe you should keep this into your minds. Take this into consideration. Well, as we're approaching the end of our episode, it's been a wonderful conversation and a very productive one and a very insightful one. And I'm sure our listeners are going to find it just as insightful as I do. One last question that I would ask you, Laura. If a PM or a researcher listening to this wants to start breaking their team out of the feature factory, what is one single step they can take tomorrow?
If you if you want to break out of a feature factory, you have to start tracking everything. You have to start tracking how things are doing in the real world. How did the features perform? But I think you also have to start tracking how did those features come to be, right? I think it is an important thing that we sometimes miss that yes, we need to be looking at the metrics. We need to be looking at, how did it do? Why? Use your qualitative to understand why it's doing the way it did. But I think you also need to very much track, okay, well, this thing failed. Why? So actually, I'm going to say, in conjunction with that, I know it's kind of more than one thing, but we can say that this is the one thing. Project postmortems, postmortem everything. Postmortems require you to look at how did a thing do and why did it do that way and how can we do better in the future?
Well, you heard it, folks. PMs and researchers listening out there, this is what you should do if you want to break out of the feature factory tomorrow.
Yeah, get forensic.
Get forensic. Exactly. Well, thank you so much, Laura. This has been an amazing conversation. But before I let you go, perhaps you can tell us where can people find you and where can people find your books?
You can find my books anywhere that fine books are sold. You can get the second one, Build Better Products, on the Rosenfeld Media site or anywhere else at your local bookshop. Probably not. Actually, if you request them at your local bookshop, they will order them for you. The UX for Lean Startups, you can get directly from O'Reilly, or you can get them on the major, get them on Amazon. Obviously, you can find me on LinkedIn if you really want to. Yeah, other than that, I am unfindable. I live in a forest on a hill like a hermit, and I will give you 7 quests to find me and follow me.
Life's better that way sometimes,
Yeah.
isn't it? It definitely is. Well, thank you so much, Laura. This has been an amazing episode. I loved so much our conversation, and I thank you so much again for your time and for taking a bit of time from your busy schedule to fit us in. I
All right.
appreciate that.
Thanks so much. It was great talking to you.
And to you folks out there, have a wonderful week and see you next time.